Hello, in this video I will show you how to create a pivot table and a bar chart in Google Sheets. In this file I have a list of all of the high schools in the state of Georgia and their graduation rates over the course of 4 years from 2020 to 2023. And these graduation rates are reported for all of the students in that school and also by demographic subgroups, so by ethnicity, but also for students who are economically disadvantaged, English learners, students with disabilities, and so on. So overall, there are 9 demographic subgroups that are reported, and then the overall graduation rate for the entire school. So each school has 10 data lines in 1 year, and again we have data from 4 years, so each school shows up in the data at least 40 times, right? So um, a pivot table would be very helpful to help me summarize the information in this data file, which is very large. This is the end of my data set, and you can see that I have 19,000 lines here. So it would be pretty hard to do this manually or even using functions. So I am going to select my entire data range in this file, and we'll click on Insert, and then select Pivot Table. Of course, Google Sheets is recognizing that you have already selected the data range that you want to use, which are the columns from A to H and all the way down, all of the rows. And I want to create a pivot table in a new sheet. As I mentioned before, I like to keep all the summaries in a different place or separated from the actual data. So I'm going to select New Sheet and then Create. So notice that I have another tab here and a template for my pivot table. Now all I have to do is select the rows and the columns for my table. And what I want to do is aggregate the data, aggregate the graduation rates by demographic subgroups. So in the rows, I am going to click on the Add button here and select the variable that I want to list in the rows, which is reporting label. Reporting label represents the demographic subgroup. Right, and notice that I have all of the groups that are listed in the data, including all students. And now for each of these, I want an average graduation rate. So I'm going to go to the values field here in my pivot table editor and click Add, and then click Graduation Rate. By default, Google Sheets selected a count A function, which basically shows the number of times that each one of these labels is listed in the data. This is not very helpful for me. What I want is an average, so I'm going to select the average function here, and now I have the average graduation rate. Now, most of the times, we are not only reporting averages, we are reporting a full range of summary statistics or descriptive statistics. So it might be very helpful to add some other values. For instance, the median. So I'm going to click on Add again, click on Graduation Rate again, and then change the function to median. So now I have the median value for each subgroup. I can do the same thing again, select graduation rate again, and request the minimum value, and then do the same thing again and request the maximum value as well. And you usually also report a standard deviation, so let's add that here as well. So I'm changing the count again to the standard deviation function. And here I have a full range of descriptive statistics for my graduation rates by demographic subgroup. Now I may want to clean up the table a little bit, maybe change the number of decimals for these numbers so it will be consistent. So I'm selecting these columns and then reducing the number of decimals to 2. Another thing that you may want to add is specify that these are averages that go across all of the 4 years, right? So maybe add another row here and include a title and specify that these are 2020 from 2023 graduation rates. Okay. If you want to change maybe reporting label, which is not very clear for someone who doesn't know what the variables are named in the file, so you can maybe change reporting label to demographic subgroup. So this will make it a little bit more clear. And then again, you can make all kinds of edits in the names of each one of these columns. For instance, one other change that I want to make in this table is that maybe I don't want to include the all students category, because my goal here is to change how to show how graduation rates are broken down or aggregated by demographic subgroup. So I'm going to go back to editing the table. So hovering over this button and clicking on it will open the pivot table editor again. And I'm going to add a filter. So I'm scrolling down all the way to filters and then click add. And I'm going to filter by the reporting label, which is the variable that I listed there. And notice that when I open the drop down menu, I have all of the options. They're all included, and I want to leave everything in here except for all students. So then I'm going to click OK. And notice that now I don't have the all students option again. Of course, you can add many other filters. For instance, filter this by year, or you can create another table to show the statistics by year. One way to do that is to just simply copy the table and then paste it where you want, but make sure to choose the regular paste. So paste it. Now you have two identical tables. The functions are still active. So these are not just values, they are connected to the data in the sheet showing the graduation rates. But now I can make changes to this table. I can make changes to the second table and add a filter by year. So I'm going to add a filter by year. Notice that all of the years are checked. I'm going to uncheck prior years and just leave 2023 and click OK. So now the numbers have changed a little bit, and these are only reflecting data from 2023, and I'm going to add a title here to indicate that. So I'm going to specify that these are the 2023 graduation rates. One other thing that you may want to do, notice that the American Indian Alaska Native group doesn't have any numbers here. This is probably because the schools didn't have enough data to report. Usually that is indicated by saying too few students in the data set, so this was the average could not be computed because there were no numerical values. So you may want to exclude this from the table if there's no data for this subcategory. If you want to do that, you can add another filter by looking at the reporting label, which is already added here, and click the drop down menu and we can uncheck the American Indian Alaska Native category and then click OK. And notice that that subcategory has been removed. Another way to report the data is to present it graphically. It's always very helpful to have a graph. It's a lot easier to see variations in the data when we do that. So we can represent graphically the data from our table. I'm going to select just the average for each of these subgroups. So I'm selecting the subgroups and the average for each group, and then click on Insert and then Chart. Now Google Sheets is automatically going to select the bar chart. In this case, it recognizes that this is the most appropriate type of chart for this data, which is true. We usually use bar charts to represent proportions when these proportions do not necessarily add up to 100% for the entire data. So each one of these subcategories may have any percentage or any proportion between 0 and 100, and they do not add up to 100% per total, like for instance with the gender distribution, right? So this is what our chart looks like, but if you want to change this chart, again, this chart is appropriate, so I'm going to stick with it, but if you want to change it, then you can click on Setup and then select the type of chart that you want. You have many options that are offered here. And then if you want to customize your chart, you have many options here as well, where you can change colors and fonts and make a lot of other changes. In this case, all I want to do is maybe edit the title. I would say average graduation rate by demographic subgroup, and then specify that this is the 2023 graduation rate. So this is how you can use pivot table to summarize data and to calculate a series of descriptive statistics for a very large data set that includes many subcategories, and also to represent that data graphically using charts.